Let's talk pockets. This is Sarah Shira. I'm from Imagine Landscapes Design, and this is a tutorial for the second mystery gnome knit along, or oh gnome you didn't if you were knitting it after the mystery is all over. So on the front of our body we knit two little garter rows, garter ridges, and in the clove multi it's fairly difficult to see. I've already used one to make a pocket as a demonstration. So it's very difficult to see the stitches, but I'm just going to make sure we understand the basic anatomy of how this is going to work. So I've made a little post-it note. So you can see here that in the garter ridge, there's going to be some caps and there's going to be some smiles. They're a little offset from each other. They kind of nestle in. And we are going to be picking up the four bottoms, the four smiles. And by bottoms, I do mean we need to make sure that we've got the hat at the top and the needles at the bottom, where, you know, the bottom of the gnome is, because we're going to be knitting the pockets up. So let's look at what that looks like. So I'm going to move our little tools aside for the moment. We are going to be using the medium-sized needles for the gnome, for two reasons. One, the other ones are already busy holding our gnome body, and two, we want the pocket to be a little bigger and a little more flexible than the fabric of the body. The fabric of the body has to hide the stuffing, whereas these do not. One note, you will notice that my stitches are only on two needles. I took panels 1 and 2, or needles 1 and 2, and I put them together, and the reason for that is that when I was knitting this pocket on, I found I was getting a lot of banging and the needle tips were actually in my way. So if you find like you're wrestling with a porcupine as you work this, you may wish to reduce the number of needles. I also just want to make sure I'm reducing the amount of noise I make from my knitting needles because these are metal. So as I said, we're going to be picking up the four bottoms, the smiles. I'm going to pick up and then knit across. The directions have you pick up and knit, but for tutorials, I really like to slow things down. So we're gonna pick up one, then I'm gonna go up and pick up the second smile, then I'm gonna move my tip up and I'm gonna pick up that third, and we've got one more, we've got four. So now we have four loops on our needle. It makes it really easy to see where we're gonna be knitting. Now I've got color 1, AKA the hat color. And the thing I need to do is I need to knit across because I told everybody to pick up and knit, and right now I've only picked up stitches. I'm going to make sure that I leave a fairly long tail because we're going to be using that to sew up the side of the pocket in a little bit. So joining a new yarn is always a little bit slippery. It always wants to mess around because it hasn't got an anchor point. So we're just going to knit those 4 stitches because that's the knit part of pick up and knit. We're going to be working flat, so we're going to turn our work. And while we are purling back, we're going to increase to 6 stitches. We're going to do that with a make one purlwise. So let me just show you what that looks like. So I'm going to purl the first one. Then I'm going to pick up the running stitch between the 2 stitches from make one. I like to use my right needle tip to lift it, and then I can get my left needle tip in. I find that a lot easier than trying to do everything with my left needle tip. So we want to go from front to back. So when I pick that up, it doesn't really matter how I pick it up with the right, but I need to go through it from front to back in that with the left needle tip. And now I need to remember to make sure my working yarn stays to the front of the work. And then with my right needle tip, I'm going to go all the way back here and try to knit this or purl this through the back loop. So my trick is to go to the front and just kind of push that loop back to create a little more room at the back. And let's see if we've got that. So I've got, yep, there it is. I'm through the back. I'm gonna purl it. So we've just increased by 1 stitch. Now I purl 2. Now I need to do the same thing. Ooh, I just pulled my needle right out of that last loop there. Bet that's freaking a bunch of you out. Don't worry. Wool doesn't really like to run anywhere. So I'm going to pick up with my right needle tip this running stitch, put it from my left from front to back, and again I need to make sure that my working yarn is to the front. Bring my needle tip around and get through that back loop, purl, and then purl 1. Now, because this new yarn has just been joined, it's going to want to make a big, large loop here. Don't worry too much. We just got to get through this last little sort of awkward bit, and then we can pull this down, and now this side will be anchored. And we can work 4 rows of stockinette. So you're going to knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Don't worry too much if this stitch keeps stretching when we go to sew that in. We will take care of that. So I will see you after you've worked 4 rows. Knit, purl, and then we'll bind off. In fact, you can do the bind off on your own. You're clever. All right. 4 rows and bound off. I bound off loosely, but didn't worry too much about it because it's not like this is lace that's going to be blocked. I had an idea just now that would be super cute. Right now, before you sew it on, would be a really good time if you want to embroider something on a pocket. This is the time to do that. So you will notice that we have 4 stitches at the bottom and 6 at the top because we increased, and yet we're still going to sew it across 4 stitches here on the body of the fabric. And the reason we're going to do that is so that we get this little ridge, this bump. I don't know, it's not a ridge. What would we call it? We get an opening, a nice little opening for sticking things into. So what we're going to do is we're going to line up this side with the same stitch that we picked up from here. And we're going to sew the right edge all the way up that same stitch. And then we're going to do the same thing on the left, where we're going to find the stitch we picked up from, and we're going to sew all the way up. And then this will be having about 2 stitches worth of opening. Let's put that on the needle, fold it over, pinch it, push it through the yarn needle eye. All right, so we need to be grabbing from the right side of each stitch has a V shape, right? And so we're going to be grabbing from the right side of that. So I'm going to grab this one, and then I'm going to grab the right V of this on the pocket. And then I'm going to grab on the next V up on this fabric and do the same here. And again, move up, bind those 2 together. There we go. All right, and now, just to make sure that this bound off edge stays part of it, I'm going to go into the same leg that I just did, but I'm going to grab one part of that first bound off stitch. So I'm just going to go through the center and get that snug down. I'm going to plunge my yarn straight down into the fabric, and we will deal with the ends later. Let's do the same thing. Now for this side of the pocket, obviously we have to start at the top and sew down, and that requires us to make sure that we are stitching into the same row when we start. So we want to see, we're going to go across. In this one it's nice because I've got sort of darker greens and then I've got browns, and I'm going to be working into the brown row. And then I want to make sure that I've got the right column of stitches. So this is the right leg I'm going to start with. And I'm going to grab this. Well, no, I said I was going to grab from the bind off, just like I did on the other side. So we'll start with the bind off. And then we're going to grab that again and do the first V. There we go. Now we can move down just like we were doing before. A right leg and a right leg, right leg, right leg. Oh, no, I split something there. There we go. Right leg. Don't jump a right leg, right? Right leg. This is the next stitch. That is the next stitch. So we've got the pocket sewn on. I'm going to plunge my yarn through, And the nice thing about having the body open is we don't have to worry too much about, oh no, how are we going to conceal these ends? The ends can just be part of the stuffing, so you can just knot them into the fabric, like go through the back of a loop like this, and go through your loop one more time, no, two more times, sorry. So you've got your loop, so I'm going to go through one, and I'm going to go through two. That makes a knot. I'm just going to snug that down. I'm going to clip it a little bit, but then I'm just going to leave it because we're going to stuff it anyways, and so we might as well leave that as part of the stuffing and not worry too much about burying that end perfectly. We just need to secure it. And so that's how I'm going to deal with the other end as well. I hope that this pocket tutorial pleased you and helped you, and that your pockets make you as happy as they make me. Can't wait to see you for the next tutorial for Oh Gnome You Didn't. Hope this helped, and in the meantime, happy knitting and happy gnoming. Bye-bye.